Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Binge Chickens reviews. Back to review the new episode of WandaVision, episode 4, that just dropped last night, our time. This morning time, I guess, if you're in the US or various other places. And I'm your host for this week, Alex. And with me, I have Lo. How are you, Lo?
Hey, Alex, I'm good.
It was a very different episode that we got this week than the first 3 episodes. I think sort of appropriately named We Interrupt This Program, a bit meta with the references to the fact that this sort of took us out of the sitcom world that we've been getting used to. How did you find this sort of change of pace?
Well, yeah, I mean, it literally interrupts the storyline of WandaVision that we have been watching these last few weeks. I thought it was good. Like, I think there was some feedback last week that people we want to know what's going on, and people may be starting to get a bit tired of the sitcom, and wanting a bit more, some more answers. And I guess this doesn't really provide answers, but at least gives us, actually provides some answers for the earlier episodes, such as like the helicopter and the beekeeper coming out of the drain, things like that. But also keeps it vague enough that we're still going to keep watching, and I think it'll be interesting. I'm going to assume from next week onwards I'll have like the linear storylines happening with Wanda's world and the outside world.
Yeah, I think I noticed on the credits that a few of the people who've popped up in this episode are in it for a few episodes. So it does seem like we're going to get inside the world and outside, which in itself is going to be really interesting to sort of maybe go back to having these more sitcom styled episodes, but with sort of, as you say, linear sort of, side by side plots of what's going on outside Westview and inside at the same time.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting. Yeah. Well, let's sort of dive into the plot from this episode, because there were a few interesting tidbits revealed as you referred to just before. I guess first of all, we got a cold open before we got the Marvel credits. We got sort of for the first time, I guess, outside of Endgame, we got a glimpse at people actually coming back from the snap. We see Monica Rambeau coming from the blip. Yeah, snap, blip. Event, I think it's been referred to as
called different things in a whole bunch of movies.
Because I think someone refers to it as the event. In Endgame, it's the snap. In this, it's the blip. Was it? I can't even remember what it was in Far From Home. I don't know if they called it the blip as well there. But anyway, we see Monica coming back in the hospital. I really liked the effects of people coming back from the snap. What did you make of this sort of intro to the episode?
That was cool, because it kind of gave us, you said, a bit more context as to when this is all happening, and then we also get a bit more of an understanding of Monica as a character as well, and who she is, and how it's all linked to that Marvel world.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten that she was in Captain Marvel. So she's the daughter of Maria Rambeau.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a cool sort of little link to the films. I think, unlike the old TV shows from Marvel, these ones are sort of directly linking into what we got in the cinematic universe, which is kind of cool. It sort of makes it all feel a bit more connected, which is nice.
Yeah, it's nice to see more of those connections, I guess, because that's the whole point of these Marvel movies, that they all start to intersect and intertwine and really develop this world or universe. So getting more of that now, and not just having the WandaVision thing being separated, actually directly ties in with the events of those Avengers films. Captain Marvel.
And so then we get Monica going back to work. So she works at Sword, which is meant to be doing sort of outer space explorations and having sort of an astronaut program, as Monica sort of refers to. But director Tyler Hayward, who is a maddeningly familiar looking sort of actor, where I looked at him and I thought, I'm assuming he's somebody that's been in a Marvel production before, but actually this is his introduction, is the director of Sword now. And tells Monica that the program's been grounded and that she can be reassigned to investigating Westview.
I don't think the program's been grounded. I think she's been grounded because Monica.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Maria put in place so that people did come back from being snapped. That protocol's be in place. And obviously that protocol meant that she can't go back into space for a little while. So instead she gets to stay on the ground and be literally grounded.
We sort of the tidbit that sort of gets her, or the breadcrumb that gets her investigating Westview, is a missing person who I don't think we know the identity of yet. I'm assuming it's not Wanda. They all seemed a bit surprised that Wanda was.
I reckon it's probably Agnes.
It's who?
Agnes, maybe.
Yeah. It could be. Because when they,
that was just my first thought, because she's one of the characters we actually know about, and she wasn't identified as a Westview. So I'm jumping ahead here. When they're identifying all the people within Wanda's world, she wasn't identified as one. We got like the real names of like Norm and the boss and his wife in the first episode. I'm blanking on Mr. Hart.
And Herb, is it the neighbor?
Yes, and Herb as well.
Yeah, so that could be interesting. And then we get another link. We get a few links actually to characters that do exist in the cinematic universe. With first of all, Jimmy Woo, who is of Ant-Man fame, was Ant-Man's parole officer in that film, and he's sort of the FBI cop who's investigating Westview when Monica gets there. It's sort of an interesting mystery to start with because, well, first of all, I was kind of curious because the sign for Westview seems to be outside of that filter or the screen that they've got going into the town. So I'm sort of wondering, does that mean that the town does exist and that those cops that they spoke to have just had their memory glitched on its existence? Yeah. Or is it the other around that it is a new town?
I think, No, it's an old town, and I think that's why they were able to identify the real identities of the people in the Wonder world, because they are real residents of Westview. But the cops are like, oh yeah, Westview doesn't exist, and I'm pretty sure Monica and Jimmy actually were just like, wait, so something's happening where it's causing people to have amnesia that this place exists, but how can we see it, and how can we acknowledge that this place exists? So there seems to be some other things going on. To those who maybe are aware of the reality of Westview. I don't know. It wasn't really made clear if it, like, when they had that conversation. I don't think it was very clear as to whether Westview was a created world and that sign just appeared, and the cops from Eastview were like, "Yeah, this doesn't exist."
I guess,
but then they were saying when they were identifying residents, it kind of makes sense that maybe Westview does exist. Yeah,
and I guess perhaps maybe the most obvious clue is, why would you have an Eastview if you don't have a Westview?
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what Jimmy and Monica were like. Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And then we sort of start to get little I guess hints of what's happening on the outside during the episodes that we got in the first few weeks. We get the helicopter drone getting flown into their yard, which disappears through the filter.
Yes. When Monica pulled the helicopter drone out, I was just like, oh, it's the helicopter.
Yeah.
I was like, now it's all making sense now. Like, why did this appear? Because that random helicopter in her yard, in Wanda's yard in episode 2, was very random.
Do you think that they've explained too many of the mysteries? Like, we got the helicopter, we get the guy dressed in the beekeeper suit, we get the voice in the stereo, all explained in this episode?
I think people were getting a bit. I think they're timed correctly in revealing all this stuff. So now the ultimate question is, how is this happening, rather than what is happening? If that makes sense. I mean, obviously, we still don't know exactly what is happening, but we have better understanding, which means we can go into like the next episode, which I'm going to assume is back to the normal sitcom format, or in terms of we'll probably get more of WandaVision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
what I was saying.
No, that's okay. We then got Monica then tried to follow the helicopter drone through because it had vanished, and she ends up getting sucked into the world. And it's at that point that they sort of bring in a whole bunch of scientists to try and solve the mystery. We get Darcy Lewis, who's from Thor and Thor: The Dark World, is also one of the scientists who's brought in, and she's the one that sort of quickly starts to solve what's happening and figuring out that there's these television frequencies, and starts to be able to watch the episodes.
It was the CMB something frequency, and then and then realized that there was, so it was that radiation frequency, and then she realized that there was a broadcast frequency intertwined with that. So, yeah.
What did you make?
The thing.
Yeah, what did you make of the fact that, I guess, it looks like there's a whole lot more episodes than what we saw, so presumably you'd get like a whole season of 50s episodes, and then B, the fact that the episodes that they're watching are slightly different or altered from what we see, which is that basically whenever there's a significant sort of moment that we've sort of picked up on in the first few episodes, there's a blip or a glitch and it skips to the end credits.
Yes. I think it's interesting that there are probably more episodes. Like, it makes sense. I can't imagine that if this world's been created, that they're literally changing time periods every day, because, you know, that would be a huge red flag.
Yeah, which when we sort of
in the world, but also like at what point it would mean like there'd have to be an endpoint quite quickly. And obviously this is not happening over, you know, like 2 or 3 days. This is happening over a longer length of time. So it makes more sense that there are more episodes, and they're living their life out.
Yeah, which we sort of
and I mean,
sort of talked
Darcy
about
says,
last week.
Yeah, Darcy says, you know, there's when they start to try and work out how they can get into contact with those inside the world. She mentions that each day Wanda washes the dishes at least once, which she says is awful. Like, in each episode, she washes the dishes at least once, because that's what women do, apparently. And that there's a radio next to her, and that she'd like to, try and get through to her. But I think it's interesting that I thought the fact they picked up so quickly that it was a TV frequency and it was a TV show, I think that happened really quickly. Like, that, in terms of a plot point, was solved very quickly. And I get they're trying to basically squish in the events of the first 3 episodes that we've already watched, and put that timeline, I guess, into this is what's been happening in the real world at that time. So yes, it makes sense that it was rushed. From a viewer's perspective, I thought it was like very rushed. I thought they could have lengthened out the discovery of it's actually a TV show, and then short some other bits. But
do you think maybe this episode should have been maybe more like a 30 or 40-minute episode? And maybe in that way it would have even more distinguished from the sitcom episodes being 20 minutes if we got the sort of the interruption was a longer episode where you could sort of spend more time looking into this stuff?
No, I think the thing that I don't know, I thought going back into Wanda's world, I'm just going to refer to it as that or into Westview, was a bit not jarring but unnecessary. I think maybe keeping it separate would have been better, and had this episode just be this is what's happening on the outside and what we can see from the outside, rather than at the end there then jumping into. And I guess the show is about Wanda and Vision, so they probably need to include that. But they could have started the episode off next week with that or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And spend more time on the outside. I think that was a little bit jarring. I mean, showing the whole Monica scene I thought was great, but then the bit, I don't know, there was so much, like, I don't know what you would change, because the stuff with Vision at the end as well was also really
Creepy.
what anyway, we're jumping ahead. We're
Yeah.
talking about so yeah, I did enjoy that they discovered the TV show, and like while they're trying to work out what exactly is happening, they're all getting really engrossed in the TV show.
Yes, I quite enjoyed that Jimmy and Darcy just started watching the show and getting really invested in the plot.
Yes, exactly. It was I mean, it's a good tie back to us as in the audience outside also getting caught into the sitcom plot as well. But yeah, there's definitely more episodes than what we saw. So obviously we've seen key episodes. Though the pregnancy episode, I mean, that could just be a trope for a sitcom episode as well. But
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, with the pregnancy episode, it's interesting that clearly they're sort of just living their lives in this world. And we sort of talked last week about how the inhabitants would be quite jarred if it was, 1 week it's the 50s, then it's the 80s in a couple of days. But the pregnancy episode, it still seems as if she gets pregnant and she gets pregnant and it turns into color. And then she has the baby really quickly. So it seems like that would be almost, maybe it's the first episode in the 70s, I guess.
Yes, I would assume that. And like that's the plot, is them being parents. And like it's not unheard of.
Maybe it's speeding up.
Particularly because, yeah, it could be speeding up. Particularly as well because it is where I'm going to assume Wanda's in control here. That maybe she, rather than extending the pregnancy, like having it one and done kind of thing. And I said that's not like, it's not too far away from what might be happening in an actual sitcom from that time. Particularly if like the actress isn't, actually pregnant and having to wear a bump.
And I think as well, like we had in the first few episodes, we had lots of references to kids and saving the kids and doing things for the kids and all that sort of thing. It did feel like there's a lot of focus on getting to her being pregnant as sort of the I guess the theme of the world or the theme of the town.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. So these are some more, I guess, questions that we've got that hopefully will be answered.
Yeah, and like you said, like it's great that we got all these. We got all these answers, but it also raises a whole lot more questions as well. We sort of already said, we had the guy who was in sort of the radiation suit crawls into the town, supposedly very slowly, because it looks like he's doing that for at least a day or two. Considering
that's what it felt like.
He starts to crawl through when it's still in the 50s, and then he gets into the town and it's the 60s. But it also feels like it's been quite a while from the observation people, like at least 48 hours. So I'm like, how he's crawling very slowly.
That timing seemed a bit weird, but
yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, he sort of went into the sewer and I was like, oh, we're already jumping ahead. Okay. But then it slowed down again. And then it was only a little while later that we got the Jimmy trying to speak to Wanda through the stereo. They discovered that Monica was in the world as well. It was also sort of all happening at the same time, which I think actually happened after he crawled through the sewer.
Yes, I feel like he went into the sewer and then they discovered that Monica was there. And Jimmy was saying this is not the same. It's Monica, but it's not the same strong woman that I met outside of the world. So what's happened? So obviously the people who are in there are being changed. And we see that anyway when they start to remember that something's wrong. That, their real personality starts to come out a bit. Or when they start to remember their reality. But yeah, it was cool seeing Jimmy Woo talking and seeing that actually come through and seeing what they actually see. So what we're seeing as the viewer of those sitcom episodes are different to what the people from Sword are seeing on their televisions when they're watching it. Because the part where Dolly, says to Wanda, like, who are you? And breaks the glass and cuts a hand and there's the red blood. That got skipped and it went straight to Dolly saying, you know, do you know how a lady washes blood out of whatever she said.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the blood getting skipped. It's interesting when they get the photo of the helicopter and the helicopter's in color, so that it is actually showing that. I guess it's the idea that these external things are colorized, but it's also interesting that I guess the blood wouldn't be yeah, I don't know. There's a few things that are still
it's
kind
like
of
reality slipping through.
Yeah, impacting on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also, sorry.
Oh no, I liked that the helicopter changed from like the helicopter drone that we saw outside
into
to
a
like
toy
that.
helicopter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also found it interesting that they were, so obviously we got Darcy was the person who was reviewing or watching the TV shows at the end of the first episode that we saw. But what I found interesting as well was that while they were talking, I think it might have been during that scene, it then goes to an ad break, which is obviously the ads that we've been seeing, but no one seems to be paying attention, or maybe they are, I don't know, but no one seems concerned that we're getting these references to Hydra in the ads.
Yeah, I didn't mention the ads. So maybe that's something that will come up later. Because they didn't once mention the ad. But the ad break for them was very well timed that happened. Like the blood and the Jimmy coming through the radio, and that part skipped and then it went to an ad break. It's almost as if
I'm trying to think if that's
almost as if Wanda's being given time to go, okay.
Got to set the scene now.
Yeah. I need to get back on to focusing on. Well, again, I'm assuming that this is all being created by Wanda at this point. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, we sort of debated that last week, and I think it's certainly looking more likely that it's Wanda controlling things, because we do then get, I guess, sort of the conclusion of this episode is, as we're sort of saying, is, Geraldine / Monica gets shot back out of the world, and we then see Wanda sort of rearranging things and fixing things up, which certainly seems to be suggesting that she's in control.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was interesting, I guess, with that end when they finally get Geraldine. She's having the baby. These guys we're watching. Jimmy and Darcy watch this scene with Monica in it, Monica helping Wanda give birth, and then Monica saying, "Oh, he was killed by Ultron," and Jimmy's just like, "Did she just say Ultron?"
Yeah.
And then it blips and. Not blips, wrong word. Monica disappeared, but like then it kind of jumped ahead and Monica's gone and they're like, where is she? But in that time period, we then we could then go back into the sitcom and actually see what happened with Wanda and Monica, which we didn't get to see last week, because last week we got what Vision saw kind of thing.
Yeah.
We saw Monica asking about Sword, not asking about Sword, sorry, asking about Ultron, and Wanda recognizing this, seeing the necklace, asking her, who are you? And then as the audience, we walk back in with Vision, and Vision's like, where's Monica? I'm sorry, where's Geraldine? Who is Monica's character in the Wanda sitcom. So we don't, like, we assume that she's been kicked out of that world, but it wasn't like because she ended up back in the real world, as we saw at the end of last week. But now we actually got those blanks filled, so we know it was definitely Wanda who went, this is not happening, and kicks her out, and then fixes everything, because she did leave a few holes in some walls and fences when she decided that that's it, by Monica, by Geraldine.
And we get a pretty uneasy looking Vision at the end of the episode, as if he's sort of starting to sense that something's going wrong.
Yes. It was interesting getting that bit, and like Vision walking back in, and Wanda's obviously still quite unsettled from the encounter with Monica / Geraldine / Monica, and we have probably one of the most interesting things of the episode. Not only is Vision looking quite
the episode, I guess,
unsure and uneasy about everything that's happening, and he's obviously starting to feel like the rest of the townsfolk that something's 100% not right here. And we get a zombified looking Vision.
Which sort of makes me think like, I wonder if Wanda has sort of it's sort of Weekend at Bernie's style, where she's just sort of floating around his like dead corpse from Infinity War, and is just sort of making it look lifelike for her in her sort of imagination. It'd be a bit creepy.
Yeah. I mean, really, we got a glimpse of what Wanda's, I guess, covering up. And like, she's looked at Vision and seen this a dead Vision essentially, and then had to shake her head, and it resets to the Vision that we've had throughout the sitcom. But yeah, as you said, this is interesting. Yeah, what exactly is she doing? Does she have his actual body and floating him around? But I'm pretty sure when he got killed at the end of Infinity War.
Infinity War, yeah.
That he was like smashed to smithereens.
Yeah.
So maybe it's also her reality coming through, and she's realizing that that's the last time she saw him was him dying / dead. So I don't know. It's interesting. And it was interesting throughout all those scenes, and you pointed this out to me when we were watching it last night, that the screen kept changing from like when we
aspects,
went to the sitcom. Yeah. When
because I don't really know.
When Wanda was
I don't really
confronting
know the
Geraldine and
different
Monica.
aspects.
Yeah,
but like
it went from the square to the.
We had like the full screen for the main part of the episode with Marvel with Sword.
It's definitely an indicator that this is the real world, and this is reality. And then when we're in the make-believe world, that's when it goes back to the square screen.
But first, so when it was Wanda being all serious, it was the different aspect where it was like the letterbox, and then when it went back to the sitcom, that's when it went to the square. So we've had like the 3 different aspect shifts, which I thought was quite cool.
Yeah, I think it started off in square with the sitcom when we originally went in.
Yes.
After Jimmy and Darcy were watching, and then we went into the sitcom, and then when she was talking to Monica / Geraldine, that's when it opened up to that long screen again when she kicked her out, and then when everything returned back to normal, that's when it went back to like in the sitcom being square. But yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah, things are definitely unraveling. So it's very interesting.
So that's pretty much with
the episode. Yeah, the episode ends pretty much the same as last week's episode, with Monica being surrounded by the people from Sword, and Vision and Wanda sitting down to watch TV with their new babies.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the end of the episode. And as we said, we might get, I guess we'll probably get the 80s sitcom next week. I think Paul Bettany has said that there's a Malcolm in the Middle styled episode, which I'm guessing is probably the 90s episode, or was Malcolm in the Middle 2000s? I'm probably showing my age here a bit. I can't remember. So that it could be the 2000s episode. Maybe it's sort of overlapping.
Yeah.
So I think we've still got a few sitcom episodes to come. I guess just sort of giving my thoughts overall, I liked the episode, but at the same time, as we sort of said at the start, as we were starting the episode, that it was a bit of a shame that we got the 3 episodes of the sitcoms, and now we were sort of getting this is what it all means, or what a lot of it means, and it was sort of the 4th episode, and I'm kind of disappointed a little bit that there's not more that's still being left as a mystery, because I did like last week that we were sort of debating, was it Wanda controlling it, or was it these people monitoring her? And now we're like, oh no, that's just Sword, that's fine.
I think it's still open enough that is it Wanda controlling it, and it does come across
maybe it's Agnes,
that way.
Yeah.
But if they turned around and said a third person's actually controlling this world and has brought this to life, I wouldn't be surprised. Like that wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't like be mad at that. That also makes plausible sense as well. So yeah, I mean, sorry, same thing for me in terms of I've been really enjoying like being caught up in that sitcom world and not knowing that having this episode being the what was it called again? Yeah, we interrupt this program and having it kind of almost like the behind the scenes look.
Yeah.
I was a bit like, oh, I was wanting to see Wonder and Vision's story a bit more. But look, that'll happen next week. I enjoyed the episode. I would have liked it to be like a double if they released like episode 4 and 5, so I could get the sword stuff plus the Wonder and Vision thing. I would have been really happy.
One comment that I saw made about this episode that someone was disappointed with was sort of the vibe that it's giving, that it's all because Wanda's going crazy and, you know, we're going down that trope of having this crazy woman sort of,
the
she's
mad
lost
woman
her,
in the attic.
you know, yeah. What did you make of that? That they're sort of painting Wanda as going a little bit kooky with you know, we were sort of saying, you know, she's seeing the dead Vision. She's clearly quite angry at Geraldine bringing up her brother, things like that.
I mean, it's very much that's a trope I'm very much exploring at the moment with some of the books that I'm looking at for work. But yeah, I guess, I mean, it is a very, very common idea, the mad woman, yeah, being, well, crazy.
Because women be crazy.
But I mean, I also kind of get that if it's like a grieving Wanda, grief does crazy things to people as well. So I don't think I've got enough evidence. I mean, as I said, I'm assuming it is Wanda's world at the moment, but I wouldn't at all be surprised if there was another third party that was actually initiated all of this. So I feel like I don't really have enough information to be like, oh, what is Disney / Marvel doing?
Yeah.
I'd hope they're not doing that. Like, surely. Yeah. But then again, it is such a classic idea. It's just making it more for. It depends, I guess, what they do with it. If it's done well contextually for a 2020 world, yes. If they fall back into some older ideas or older styles, where they solely blame the woman going crazy, then there's issues there too.
Well, that's just about it for the episode. I think just to round everything up, I was going to just sort of kind of give my favorite moment for the episode, or my funniest moment, because I guess this has generally been more of a sitcom, more of a lighter style show, and having Jimmy Woo come back is probably one of the funnier elements from Ant-Man, and you know, he's just
even Darcy, like Kat Dennings is quite a comical character in like Thor and things as well. They both bring that comic relief to that serious situation of, oh crap, there's a world that's been dumped here very randomly and no one knows what's going on situation.
Yeah, and like Randall Park's just great, so it's great to have him in the show. I really liked the moment they were watching the show and Wanda was starting to give birth, and you know, Jimmy's clearly quite focused on the screen, and Darcy sort of turns to him and says, "Oh, do you want some?" And he starts going, "Oh, well, you know, kids, yeah, I could imagine a few little Jimmy. Oh, you mean the chips?" And so that was probably the biggest sort of laugh out loud moment for me in the episode. Was there a particular moment that stood out for you that you really enjoyed?
I like that no one got Darcy a coffee.
Yeah.
I was like, of course. Not necessarily a funny thing, but something that I thought was cool in terms of things adapting to the world once they passed through the barrier, was the guy that we mentioned walking through the pipe, and he got like the silver pipes when he got through, his radiation outfit turned into a beekeeper's costume, which is totally random. But I guess that's something from that time period that would look similar. But then he was also tied to a bit of rope as well as I guess, so they could pull him back if they needed to. But the rope that went through with him and then fell off turned into a like skipping rope.
And it was
So
a
it's
color
interesting.
skipping rope as well, which
Yes.
sort of followed with the drone turning colored when it went in as well. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Maybe because and that could be maybe the timelines meeting and messing up a little. Because he went through in color as well, and then when he got out of the sewer, he was black and white.
Yes, I was a little
Um,
confused at that.
which was interesting because obviously he's then definitely gone into that 50s world. But that
Mm,
was right
mm.
before everything turned. Yeah, it's interesting. So those things from the modern world seeping into that black and white world were coming through as color, I think, to indicate that this is not
They
from
didn't
here.
belong. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that was interesting. Yeah,
But then
the
I
little
guess it
things
seems
are
like,
interesting.
yeah, I guess it seems that people maybe turn black and white because, of course, Monica turned black and white when she became Geraldine, and
Yes.
this guy became black and white when he came out of the sewer. So maybe
Yes.
it's just
Yeah.
objects like the helicopter and skipping rope.
Yeah.
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 Huh. It's very interesting. I think that there's a lot of questions still to come.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to seeing how the style shifts if we're going to get, as we'll sort of started the episode by saying, if we're going to get sort of sitcom and outside world. Maybe maybe it's just there'll be a framing scenes outside the world at the start and the end of the episode, like that.
Yeah. I guess we'll see how they do it. It could be like what they did today, not today, last night.
Oh, I think we've lost Low. Oh,
Um,
there we go.
I don't know how they're going to do it. I have a feeling we'll probably get more of the sitcom next week, and like the end of the episode this week where we had um the WandaVision stuff.
Yeah.
That's then what we'll maybe get. But I can't imagine them jumping around too much because they change the aspect of the screen, so that would be really jarring as well.
Annoying if it's just sort of
For
keep
audience.
shifting around. Yeah, yeah. Could be
Hello?
interesting. Well, hello? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. I think we're having a few audio issues as we end the episode, so we will leave things there. Thank you everyone for listening in, and we will be back next week for the next review of WandaVision. So hopefully we'll see you then. Thanks everyone.